Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Burwell, one of the most sacred responsibilities that we as public servants have is to safeguard the hard-earned taxpayer dollars that the American families entrust to us. Now, 7 states, including the District of Columbia, are having a dismal time building their own exchanges. In fact, the failure in some of these states is nothing short of spectacular. 2 of the states are abandoning their broken websites. And based on the most recent reports, these states have received more than $1.25 billion to plan and build their exchanges. Now, some of these states are looking for additional federal funds to continue their failed experimentation, at least in my view. So I have 2 very simple questions to ask you, and I would really appreciate a yes or no answer to these, if you can. First, do you believe that these states that have so negligently managed their funds should be required to reimburse the taxpayers for their incredible failures? If you could say yes or no, I'd appreciate it.
Senator, with regard to the specifics of each of the state cases, that's something, if confirmed, I'd want to learn about. And I think what I would say yes to is that we need to understand, and where the federal government and the taxpayer has had funds misused, we need to use the full extent of the law to get those funds back for the taxpayer.
Okay, the second question is, can you give me and the American taxpayers a public commitment today that HHS will not give any more dollars to those failed exchanges for more failed experiences?
Senator, with regard to the specifics of how the exchanges and those funds go forward, I guess what I would do is right now, because I'm not familiar with the specifics, because I'm not there are 3 things. 1, we have to understand what went wrong. 2, when we do understand that, as I said, we need to go to the full extent of the law if there are contractors or others that have misled through their contracts or other things to fully recover. And 3, I think we need to make sure that we both learn from the mistakes of the exchanges that aren't working and learn from the exchanges that are, such as Washington State, where Senator Cantwell is from.
Okay, now your first and foremost responsibility as an appointed official is to be accountable to Congress and the American people. Now, one important way Congress fulfills its obligation to the taxpayers is by asking for information about your department's activities. Over the past year, we have sent at least 5 letters to HHS that have gone unanswered. Responses to questions for the record takes months. In fact, you now need action forcing events like this confirmation hearing to get answers, which are often incomplete. My colleagues all share similar frustrating experiences, so I have 2 straightforward questions to you. Number 1, do I have your public commitment today that you will respond to our inquiries in no more than 30 days?
Senator, with regard...
Unless you ask us for extra time.
Senator, you have my commitment that with regard to being responsive, that is something I consider important, and I think hopefully you've heard from your colleagues that have had the chance to work with me in the past year that it is something I prioritize in terms of responsiveness and communication.
I was very impressed with what Senator Coburn had to say, and I agree with that, by the way, and we'll appreciate that. Now, the second is, what in your opinion should be our recourse as a committee if this public commitment is not kept?
Senator, with regard to if there are frustrations and if I am confirmed, I hope that you would pick up the phone and call me. Okay. One of the things that I think actually is a very important part of working and getting to solution, I think, as Dr. Coburn said, we don't always agree. But if we can have conversations and those conversations can be specific, I think that's something that we can work to figure most things out, even at times when we may not agree.
Well, thank you. Director Burwell, to date, the administration has made at least 22 unilateral changes to Obamacare without consulting any of us up here in Congress. Most recently, HHS announced it was raiding a Medicare fund to provide extra payments to Medicare Advantage plans to forestall benefit cuts. On April 10th, I asked Secretary Sylvia whether or not there would be any more changes to Obamacare, and her answer, in my opinion, was not very reassuring. So again, I have 2 questions for you. Will you commit to considering Congress and obtaining legislative changes to the law in the future?
Senator, with regard to the issues of implementation, when there are things in places, I think the core objective is common sense implementation and improvements within the context of the law, and where one needs changes with the law, seek that. In the president's current budget, actually, we do seek changes, and it has to do with small businesses and some of the tax issues. That's a place where we think that we can improve that, and we need the support of the Congress in order to do that.
Okay, my last question. If you do expect more changes or delays to Obamacare, what will they be?
Senator, with regard to the implementation of such a large and complex thing that's part of such a large part of our economy, I'm not sure that I can sit and predict. But I think what's important is, as one moves along and is implementing, is listening and learning as you go, making those common sense changes within the context of the law, and whether there are changes that require legislative changes to work with the Congress to do it. It is a very complex system. It was before the Affordable Care Act. Our health care system in the United States is a large, complex system. The law itself will hopefully make and is making improvements, but it is a complex system that I think will be evolutionary as we learn. And one of the things that I'm hopeful is, if I am Secretary, that listening and learning and hearing and making changes that are appropriate is something that one would want to do.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Rockefeller.